Today I want to talk to you about the importance of remembrance. The importance of remembrance. Tomorrow is Memorial Day, and for a lot of people, I think it's easy to forget what it's really about. I think a lot of people look at Memorial Day as the weekend. A long weekend, a 3-day weekend, or if you take Friday off, a 4-day weekend. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying time off and disconnecting from whatever our usual routine is. And yet I think we lose something if we forget what it is that's behind our ability to be able to take those days off. Do you know what Memorial Day was first called? Decoration Day. I think I heard some of you mumble it. Decoration Day. And its roots are in the Civil War. The reason for Memorial Day was to remember those who had lost their lives in the Civil War, regardless of which side they were fighting. And it was celebrated initially with people going out to the gravesites and putting flowers on the graves. I don't know, I didn't look deeply enough into it to find out when it started to be called Memorial Day, but the intention behind it is to pause and to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice. I think there are even some today who confuse Memorial Day and Veterans Day. They don't know what the difference is, but there is a difference. Memorial Day, as I said, is about those who have served in the military and have died in that service, whereas Veterans Day is about all those, living or not, who have served and are serving in the military. And though it is a secular holiday, Memorial Day, there's spiritual concepts woven into it, and that's what I want to lift up for us as we explore what this means to us and the value of it. I think there are at least these 5 qualities that are spiritually grounded in this celebration of Memorial Day. They are remembrance, they are reflection, they are gratitude, hope, and unity. Remembrance, reflection, gratitude, hope, and unity. And so I want to take a look at each of these a bit. Remembrance. I'm at the age where when I forget something, I wonder if it's just the normal kind of forgetting or if it's maybe meaning something else. Anybody else like that? Yeah? Do you ever get up from the chair or the couch, go into a room to get something, go into the room and forget what it was that you went into the room for? Right? I remember, yes, I remember a comedian who used to say that he was convinced his memory was in his bottom, because whenever that would happen and he'd go back and sit down where he would suddenly remember what it was he was after. So there's a part of us, I think, that, that recognizes the importance of memory. We don't want to forget. But failure of memory, forgetfulness, is not just inconvenient, it can be dangerous. I think we need to remember important things, right? We need to remember important things, life lessons. We need to remember that freedom isn't free. We need to remember that rights come with responsibilities. There's a beautiful teaching from Mahatma Gandhi where he gives 8 qualities, and one of them being the idea of rights coming with responsibilities, that we need to understand that with all of the blessings that we receive, that there is the flip side of that blessing that requires something of us. We live in a free country. It doesn't come without a price, though, right? Rights must coincide with responsibility. We've all read and have heard that what we don't learn from history, what happens? repeats, and we can recognize that on a wide scale, on a collective scale. But have you not also found that to be true in your own life individually? Have you not? I certainly have, that what I fail to learn from my past patterns of behaviors or actions, guess what? I get to repeat them until I learn what it is that that situation was trying to teach me. And so remembering and knowing what to remember and hold on to is really important. The practice of remembering, I think, even takes on a deeper significance when we remember together. I'm going to be attending after church next Sunday a memorial service. I'll participate in the service for a friend of mine who was someone that I adored, admired, and respected. Some of you in this room and online knew Barbara Fields. Barbara was our executive director for the Association of Global New Thought. She made her transition just a few months ago, and she leaves really big footprints to try to step into. But when we remember together, I think about memorial services, they're a time for people to grieve in community. They're also a time for people to remember together, right? To honor and reflect upon the life of the person who has just passed, and to remember the impact that they had on us. One of the greatest legacies that we can pay to one who has passed is to try to take up in our own lives the qualities that we admired in them. Even more than beautiful flowers we can send or cards that we can send, is this idea of remembering together the impact that that person had on us, and then choosing to live our lives in a greater expression of that quality. I'm reminded of the celebration of communion in the traditional Christian church. Many of us who find our way into unity have come from, not all of us, but many of us have come from some form of traditional Christianity where we celebrated communion. What we sometimes forget, though, is that communion was an expression of the celebration of the Passover. Jesus was not Christian. Jesus was Jewish. He was celebrating the Passover with his disciples. And as he was celebrating the Passover with his disciples, he said to them, "Do this in remembrance of me." In remembrance of me. And I don't think he was speaking of do this in remembrance of me with the small m, but do this in remembrance of me, of what I represent, of the teaching that I stood for, of the way that I taught you to understand spirit or God. Do this in remembrance of me. So when we come together and choose to remember together, I think there is added power in that, and I think there is healing in that as well. So in this holiday, though it is a secular holiday, this idea of remembrance, I think has its roots in us spiritually as well. Another quality is the practice of reflecting. And to me, that takes remembrance to a much deeper place. That takes remembrance to a place of going deep within and asking, and so what does this mean for me? How can this shape the direction of my life? Or how can this mold and shape me as a person? As I think about what it means, that there are those who came before me who made this path easier for me, who made this country what it is, who made these teachings what it is. How can I reflect on that and take that deeper so that I can be a better person, a more loving person, a more understanding a person, a more tolerant person, a more giving person? As I was putting this lesson together, I did a little bit more research, and I found a blog that I want to share just a little bit from this blog. It was written by Cynthia Ackrell, and she called this "Life Lessons We Can Learn from Our Vets." in honor of Memorial Day. And she suggests these 5 ideas that we can learn in remembrance of Memorial Day or in honor of Memorial Day. Number 1, she says, live by your core civil values. Live by your core civil values. Values such as honor, respect, dignity, putting someone else's well-being ahead of your own. Second, have a sense of purpose. Isn't that so much what we're about in metaphysics and in unity? We really encourage people to find their purpose in life. Why are you here? What are you uniquely designed, blessed, created to do? Have a sense of purpose. It's called knowing your why. When you know your why, the how and the what become a whole lot easier. When you know your why, the how and the what of your life becomes so much easier. She said, number 3, remember there is no I in team. We do this how? We do this together. We do this together. Fourthly, she said, be aware that fear is part of life. Boy, I used to, when I was much newer into these teachings, I thought that I had to somehow get rid of anything I was afraid of. That fear was a sign I was doing it wrong. That fear was a sign that I was weak. But it's not. Fear is a wake-up call, right? Biologically, physiologically, it's meant to keep us alert in response to a real danger. So it's not that we get rid of fear. It's that we understand that it exists and there's an element or an aspect of it that is life-serving, life-giving, but that we also recognize that there are other kinds of fears that we allow to hold us back, right? To hold us back from doing and being all that we can do and be. Fear that somebody's not going to like us, or they're not going to understand us, or somehow we're not good enough, right? Be aware that fear is a part of life, and I would put a tagline, and it doesn't have to stop us. It doesn't have to control us. And then she says, create rituals. Create rituals. In my neighborhood, as I walk every morning, especially the last few days, I see beautiful flags all around and evidence of people finding their ways to honor, to remember. So there is the reflecting, the going deeper. What does it mean to you? Third, the practice of gratitude. Aren't you grateful that there are those that came before you to make your life a little bit easier than it would have been otherwise? You know, I think about that idea on so many different levels. Certainly we can think about that idea on the very dramatic and extreme level of those who gave up their lives for us to live in the country that we live in, right? I think we can look at that on other levels as well. When you think about the people that have influenced you and have somehow made your life better, do you not feel a sense of gratitude for them? I bet you do. I bet you might even be grateful, as am I, that there are those who have made mistakes that I haven't made, who I can learn from so I don't have to make the same mistake. Am I the only one that feels that way? No? No? Gratitude. I think about our unity community. I think about the people who came before those of you that are newer today, that helped to make who and what we have and are possible. I think about the Fillmores, the founders of Unity. I think about the people that influenced them. And so when we do that, when we think back, I believe, so that we can then move forward with greater graciousness, with a sense of appreciation. I grew up with my father my experience of my father tended to be one who believed in being a self-made person. And so independence in my family, at least for my dad, was a really, really important thing. And so I thought that was the end-all and be-all, that you're meant to be completely independent. You are to be a self-made person. I don't agree with that anymore. I don't agree with that anymore. I agree with only part of it. I want to be as strong as I can be. I want to help to inspire others to be as strong as they can be. But what I know is we are interdependent. We need each other. And anyone who says they are self-made is telling a lie. They're not telling the truth. Does that make sense? We each are the product of those who have influenced us for good or for bad. Sometimes we're who we are because we said, I'm never going to be like that person. And sometimes we are who we are because we said, I want to be like that person. Does that make sense? I'm in part the kind of minister I am because I had one very bad role model, one exceptionally good one, and one exceptionally bad one. And I can remember saying of the bad role model, I will never be like that. I will never be like that. So we are influenced. Where that also becomes important to me is that not only are we influenced and therefore want to be grateful for those who have impacted us, but we play that role. We play that role. You are, as am I, probably more powerful and influential than we realize. The very way we live and move and go through our lives, our days, have an impact on others. They leave an impression on others. Sometimes the impression is very, very deep, and sometimes it just may be momentary. But we are forever influencing and impacting those who are witnessing how we are living, how we speak, what we stand for, who we stand up for, how we conduct ourselves, how we drive our cars, how we act in public, the words that we say. And so one of the most important things we can do, I think, is to be mindful that we are forever influencing others. Fourth is a practice of enduring hope, I wrote in my notes, never lose hope for a better, brighter, safer, more peaceful and just world for all. It is a way to honor the legacy of those who died, trying to make it so for all. Think about that for a moment. Those who fought and gave the ultimate that you and I can be where we are now, would you not believe or think that part of what they would want from us is that we would be forever hopeful about creating as loving and fair and just and peaceful world as we could? I think what a double tragedy it would be if to have made the ultimate sacrifice for others, for those others then to lose hope and throw up their hands in despair and say, it's fruitless, it's useless. This is why in our mission as a community, we're about the idea of transforming our individual lives, doing our own inner work, healing where we need to heal, growing and stretching, but knowing that we must not stop there, that we must be about transforming the world with love. And we do that in many different ways. You do that whether you realize it or not. Every time you choose love over hatred, every time you choose hope over despair, every time you choose to forgive over holding back and resenting or being bitter, you are depositing, if you will, in the global good for all. And though it may seem insignificant, it still matters. It still matters. And of the many things we should never forget, I think that's one of the things we should never forget. That you and I, by the way we choose to be, make a difference. And we ought to be, I hope we are, committed to making a positive difference. And then the last point I would share in what I think is a spiritual takeaway from this holiday is the idea of practicing unity. Practicing unity. Memorial Day brings us together in remembrance, I think, and in an effort to show respect, but it needs to be something more than just an outer act. It needs to be something that we feel from the inside out, to really live our lives with the awareness that we are connected to each other, that the same spark of the divine, God, Spirit, Allah, the Buddha nature, the Christ nature, whatever you want to call that lives in me, lives in you. And that together we can help lift that up and let that express itself more fully. There are many who don't believe that about themselves. There are many who have been brought up or beaten down to think of themselves as somehow unworthy, somehow less than. Those of us fortunate enough to be in this teaching and fortunate enough to be committed to practicing it have a role to play in healing that, any place that we see it, to remind people of the truth of their nature. The truth of their nature as an expression of the one, as an expression of the infinite. We believe that there's just one presence and power in the universe, and that presence and power is Spirit. That presence and power is God. And that within each and every being is the spark of that. And that our job in unity is to help bring that forth in ourselves and in each other. So I've given you lots of different ways to maybe look at and think about this holiday, that it's not just an extended weekend, but it's a time of remembering, it's a time of reflecting, it's a time of serving and giving and sharing. I hope there's at least one idea that you can take that will make your celebration a little bit more meaningful. Namaste.